All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 21st, 2020 regular council meeting. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Hausch.
I'm here.
McQueen.
Here.
Stokes.
Here.
Krieger.
Here.
Curlis.
Here.
Also present are Village Manager Josue Salmeron, Police Chief Carlson, Public Works Director Johnny Burns, Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swift, Solicitor Brianne Parcels, Florence Randolph, our COS, is here, and Sergeant Watson is also online.
All right, thank you, Judy. I wanted to highlight at the beginning of the meeting that if anyone does want to make any comments throughout the meeting, that they should make sure that they are either on the Zoom meeting using the link, which you can get from Judy. And Judy, if you want to, maybe put an email address or however people get that. Otherwise, you can call in, and that's another option. If you need a phone number, we can put that in the chat as well to get the phone number that you need. But we want to make sure anyone that wants to participate is doing that through the Zoom meeting so we can record it. Oh, by the way, I put on my Cresco hat because I'm not sure that we have yet congratulated Cresco Labs for getting their processing license in Ohio. We should thank the state legislature. I don't know why it took so long, but what this means for our community is more jobs, more support for everything that our village is about. And just wanted to say thanks, Cresco, and thanks for keeping jobs local. Mary Ann, I believe that you had an announcement, and I think we got a visual for that as well.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. Well, in 1981, the United Nations established the International Day of Peace. It's one day when people are supposed to stop fighting and have 24 hours of nonviolence. So hopefully that has happened, and it would be great to have it more than 24 hours, but one day is a great start. And the theme for this year is Shaping Peace Together. Yes, and I did send in a little poster of that. I don't see it. Doesn't seem like it. Well, maybe it's up on the screen. I don't see it.
Yeah, we can't see it, but the audience at home can.
Yes, so I thought that was important that we understand that. Thanks.
Thanks, Marianne. And Florence Randolph, our community outreach specialist. I think you are on the line, and I thought there was some great news from the township meeting earlier that I would love for you to share with our community.
Thank you, Brian. I would like to say that earlier today, the township trustees allocated $20,000 for township and Yellow Springs residents to pay utility and rent bills. And that was wonderful because we've had no monies towards utilities until this point.
Thanks for sharing that, Florence. And, I was on that meeting, and it was really nice to hear that, again, the CARES Act money is being used in some really important ways to support people at this crisis time. I have a few other announcements, and
Brian,
and yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted, if the Greene County Health Commissioner is on, she does have an announcement. I just wanted to heads you up on that in case.
Thank you for reminding me. And I think that's Melissa Howell. Is that right? Or is that Gregory?
Melissa.
Yeah, Melissa Howell. All right. Yeah, Melissa. Yeah, you're on.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am the Health Commissioner for Greene County, and just wanted to let you know that we are seeking the renewal of a 5-year operating levy this November. It supports about 33% of our budget. We are the ones that are in charge of preventing and controlling the spread of communicable diseases, but we do lots of other things also. In the last 5 years with our levy funds, we've been able to accomplish a federally qualified healthcare center coming to Greene County. We moved to our new facility. In 2018, we responded to a hepatitis A outbreak where we had about 34 individuals with hepatitis in our community, and we gave about 350 vaccinations that year. In 2019, of course, we were responding to the tornado, just making sure that the prevention messages were out in the community that needed to be out there. All of the businesses that were affected, they were opened within 1 week of that tornado. And then in 2020, of course, everyone's familiar with the pandemic by now. We know how that affects physical health and psychological health, our social well-being, and our economic well-being. But our approach to all of the disasters, whether it's Hep A or tornado or COVID, has been, we detect the problem, we set up our command structure for this. It was multi-agency, multi-community, set that up, and then we assess where our strengths and weaknesses are in the community, seek to protect those vulnerable populations, and then we look at evaluation. So we have been able to keep healthcare workers healthy, our first responders still responding overall in the community. As of today, there were 1,367 cases of COVID from the beginning of the pandemic. 126 hospitalizations, 3 of those individuals are still hospitalized. We have 2 individuals that are in long-term acute care hospitals on ventilators and are trached. And then, so overall, we've had 28 deaths throughout the county. But just to let you know, we are here and we want to continue to be here, and we appreciate the support from our community. I also just wanted to let you know in closing that we have been endorsed by the Health Coalition of Greene County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa. And, I want to say we really appreciate the amazing work you guys are doing. And I know that you've been working with us, very closely, keeping us updated. I really appreciated and continue to appreciate the press releases that you guys are sharing. It was notable to me that September is Suicide Prevention Month. And I know that the COVID crisis has really put pressure on folks in a way that this is more important to recognize than ever. I just want to say thank you for the collaborative spirit, and I know we have a lot of community members that you work with that help keep us connected as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other announcements?
Brian, I think it would be good for us to acknowledge the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm sure everyone knows that. They may not know that we have put the flag at half-mast at the Bryan Center. That happened on Saturday, I think. I attended the vigil in Dayton last night. So that's a fundamental passing for us here and for the country and the world, really.
Yeah, thanks for recognizing that, Marianne. Any other announcements? I wanted to mention, I think it'll qualify in announcements, making sure that we are set for our work session tomorrow. So we had initially hoped to possibly be outside underneath a tent to meet, but we decided that 40-ish degree weather is probably not conducive to a productive meeting. So the current plan is to meet in the John Bryan Gymnasium. And I guess I want to check in just to make sure that all council members are on board with this. I know that the staff is ready to facilitate that. And, community members are welcome to attend. It's a public meeting and we will be videoing it, but I just want to make sure that everybody is going to be able to attend in person, very distanced. So I guess if there are any concerns, let me know now.
Brian, is there a maximum capacity that's been determined for the gym in the somewhat unlikely case that we have a lot of community attendees?
Josue?
I will defer to Johnny. Johnny, were you and Chief all been able to get a rating for the gym?
We did not talk about the gym, but the youth center is 20. So I'd say probably the max for the gym is 40. That's total.
Okay. Do we have the ability to take people's temperature? We do, right? Because we've done that at the pool.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so let's do that tomorrow. Any other concerns or questions?
Yes, I've just gotten a message from a citizen that they don't know how to get on to the council meeting. I think it's someone who wants to.
I got it.
Oh, did you get that from?
Well, if they need to send it to me because I'll send them the link. So.
Okay, I'll let them know.
Okay.
And Brian, is attendance at the meeting tomorrow from the community limited to in person, or are we going to be in person and also streaming?
We are going to be videoing. Are we going to be streaming, Josue?
No streaming. We'll be recording the meeting.
Okay, so the meeting will be recorded and we'll have it on our YouTube channel and linked out from our Facebook page. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, yeah, I think it's pretty important that we have this meeting live. I do want to say that, or in person, I do want to say that based on some issues that I think will be good for us all to highlight about how we productively work together, and some concerns that have come up. We will have 2 facilitators joining us, at least for the first half of tomorrow, and that is Cindy Seek and Frank Jennings. And part of the rationale for that was I want to make sure that I can fully participate in the discussion about how we are all getting along and working together. So they're going to support that part. And I think that will be an important lens as we get into the second part of the meeting, which is about prioritizing our goals and how we get there. I will say, if we have time to look at committee structures and other proposals that have been made that fit within developing that capacity, that can be part of the second part of tomorrow's discussion. So,
Brian, sorry to interrupt, but apparently Megan Bachman is having trouble getting on too.
Okay.
So if the link.
I see Megan Bachman in, or Yellow Springs News. I wonder if there's 2.
Oh, okay. I don't.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. The only other announcement I wanted to mention is I think many of you know that Karen Wintrow is going to be leaving the village at the end of October. It's going to be a huge institutional knowledge loss, and Karen has been involved in so much in the community. I know there is at least one celebration planned, but the village will also be celebrating Karen, and we'll have some more details about that soon. So with that, any other announcements before we move to the consent agenda? Okay, so the consent agenda, we got the minutes from our last meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying, or actually, Judy, the roll call, please.
Yes, McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we're going to review the agenda. So anything we need to add, modify, or take away? Okay. Seeing none.
Brian,
yeah,
excuse me.
Kevin.
You had, during the JSCC meeting, you had asked me to share some more details about the implicit bias training that will be happening with the village on the 23rd. And so I can share a brief note about that if you like.
Yeah, and let's do that when we do the updates on meaningful actions under old business. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Anything else? All right. Mary Ann, petitions and communications.
Yes. We had several communications regarding the proposed annexation. Joseph Amend opposes it. Connie Richardson opposed high-density housing. Karen Wintow for the Yellow Springs Chamber supports the annexation on the services resolution. Birch and Susan Carpenter want lower density housing. Amy Wamsley had concerns about the annexation. Selwa Whitesell is opposed to higher density housing. Then the Greene County Health Department submitted a report that highlighted both the surge in COVID cases and the Fetal Alcohol Syndrome Awareness Month and Suicide Prevention Month. The mayor submitted 2 reports. Henry Myers had a question about taxing people working at home from the Dayton Daily News. Marshall Walgren is concerned about the need for more parking for downtown. Karen Wintrow for the chamber supports the comprehensive land use plan and notes parking issues for downtown. Emily Seibel, some of these came in after the deadline for the packets, including Emily Seibel and Home Inc. supporting the comprehensive land use plan, and Mary Alice Wilson requesting that the mask ordinance be enforced by the police. I think that's it.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And
Can I make a quick announcement here?
yes, please.
Yes, when you use the Zoom link, it says Josue's personal meeting room. You have to wait there. You cannot go away and come back and go away and come back. Wait patiently. Josue will let you in. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Judy. And yeah, I do want to underscore Mary Alice's point about we need to continue to practice all the protocols, wearing masks, distancing, and sanitizing. So I appreciated seeing that letter coming through. So we're going to get into legislation. And first up is the second reading of Ordinance 2017. And Judy, I believe we can do that by title only.
All right, this is amending the official zoning map of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio for the properties located at 403 Xenia Avenue, 415 Xenia Avenue, and 120 East Limestone Street from B1 Central Business District to RC High Density Residential District for a total of 1.175 acres.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right, Denise, are you gonna walk us through this?
Sure. Max Chrome, on behalf of Iron Table Holdings, first approached zoning office about creating a multifamily building at 403 Xenia Avenue. That location in the B1 district does not allow multifamily. So staff suggested, after looking at the other properties in that area, one being the library, which is allowed in both B1 and RC, and the residential home on 120 East Limestone, that this would not be a big change, and it would actually be more in line with the zoning across the street on Xenia Avenue, and does not prevent an office from a professional office from being located in there, because RC does allow that. So Max then applied for a rezoning, and Planning Commission recommends approval of that.
Okay, thanks, Denise. So do we have any questions or comments from council? All right. So given that this is a second reading, I'm going to open the public hearing. And do we have any other comments or questions from community members? All right. So I'm not seeing anything. So I'm going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could call the roll.
Yes, Krieger,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Tausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have an emergency reading of ordinance 2020-20. Judy, we can do that by title only as well.
Thank you. This is approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances and resolutions as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances, approving, adopting, and enacting new matter in the updated and revised codified ordinances, repealing ordinances and resolutions in conflict therewith, publishing the enactment of new matter, and declaring an emergency.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right, who is talking about this one? Judy?
I'll do that. This is the height of clerk nerdlia. This is getting everything into the codified ordinances, and it has got to be done by ordinance because you're basically saying, yes, everything that you've put into those codified ordinances is correct. They've been vetted. They're also, if we have anything that is in conflict with the ORC, they correct that and then send it back to us to make sure that we know about it. So that is what this is.
All right, and why do we have to do it as an emergency reading?
They always send it as an emergency. I would assume just because they've already published it. And so we sort of do it behind the fact.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments from council members? All right, well, I'll open a public hearing. Any questions or comments from citizens? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to say I expect they have probably a lot of stuff to add on there since we are a pretty busy and active council. So with that, Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Tausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have ordinance 2020-22. And Judy, we can do that by title only as well.
All right, this is 2020 third quarter supplemental appropriations and declaring an emergency for the village of Yellow Springs, Ohio.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right, Josue?
Thank you, Brian. Let me know if you want me to share the screen, but you have this document in your packet. We're making some modifications to the general fund appropriations and special revenue funds. On the general fund appropriation, we have expenses that we need to adjust our budget to make sure that those appropriations reflect what we anticipate will be total spending for the year. We're requesting a change on administration total for personnel, adding an additional $20,000. This is particular response to a cash out settlement that we're required to make for employees that are exiting the village. This is particular to a recent departure. They've requested to cash out over 1,000 hours of sick leave and other leave that they've accumulated since their time here, or brought in from another job. So that's a $20,000 adjustment. We're also requesting to adjust personnel expenses under cable. This is our Channel 5 station. As you know, we've increased our number of televised, our broadcastings are specifically related to the COVID response. So we've incurred an additional labor expense here. So that's a total adjustment in the general appropriation funds of $60,000. The overall administration total is $55,000 in there. This is to make adjustments in other professional service and other line items that are not reflected in this particular item, but we typically don't break out every single one of them except for personnel expenses. Any questions Okay, on the special revenue fund, the overview here is that we received a second distribution from coronavirus relief funds totaling $65,000. We've also received a grant from the county in the amount of $15,000, and we're booking that to our economic development fund. We received this grant last year, and that allowed us to make improvements to the bike path and the parking. So we received that grant again, and we're working through our project options to allocate that grant. We're increasing expenditures for the parks and recreation fund, additional expenses of park services, and for pool expenses. As you know, we've had an additional expense at the pool. We had to hire attendants specifically for the pool, and we're making that adjustment here. We will be using coronavirus COVID funds to cover that expense, but we need to add that expense to that line item. So that's for pool and the Bryan Center. Any questions? I think I covered every line item there.
All right, do we have any questions for Josue? And since we are also reading this as an emergency, which is typical for supplementals, I'll open the public hearing in case there are any other questions or comments. Okay, if not, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Krieger.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. We are now moving into resolution 2020-37. And Judy, let's go ahead and do that by title only.
All right, this is adopting a resolution of services to be provided for the proposed annexation of approximately 30.816 acres north of East Hyde Road and west of Spillane Road pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 7.192 and authorizing the village manager to execute an annexation agreement with Miami Township.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Josue, are you starting this one off?
Yes, Brian, I want to kick this off. If you recall, council at the last hearing had questions and requested that we look into it and provide an update. So we did look into those questions, and we want to present our answers. And also joining us in this hearing is George Orber from Orber Homes and Greg Smith. So they're available to answer questions. So I will kick off with what council asked of us last council meeting. So I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know when it's visible to you.
Yes.
Brian, is this visible? All right.
Yes.
All right, here's some of the questions we received from council and citizen. What are utilities capacity and can we support this development? What are the projected revenues from this development related to utilities, income tax, property tax? How would this affect our population and size? And can our schools support this development capacity? Before I go forward, I wanna just put a note here that the annexation has to be heard on its own merits and not necessarily related to the project of the proposed development. Brianne is here in the room with me and has nodded in support that I'm correct, so I will proceed. All right, what is our utilities capacity and can we support it? Water, sewer, and electricity, the short answer is yes, we can support the development as it's been presented as draft, and the capacity of the site that can be developed. So we are confident in being able to deliver all the municipal services to that site. More detail, our current water service or plant production capacity is 1 million gallons per day. Our daily average production is between 350 and 400,000 gallons per day. This is less than 1% of the capacity. If you factor in all the water leakage that we have, we are probably at a third of our capacity, production capacity. So we feel very comfortable in being able to deliver service to this part of town. The water mains are very accessible, and it is one of the closest sites to our water plant. In sewers, again, we feel very comfortable and confident in being able to deliver service at the site. The sewer system is very accessible with sufficient capacity through a gravity-fed system. This particular area section of our community avoids the lift station where 70% of our flows are processed. So this is ideal location with newer lines and direct path to wastewater facility. On electricity, we have capacity available, and the new demand is manageable. We can deliver that. Our Public Works Director is on the call in the meeting, and he's available for any questions related to the system. Okay, what about revenues? What revenues can we look at from this project? Here are the inputs on the left side. This makes a couple key inputs and assumptions. Based on the revenue model, looking at a readiness for service fee, if the homes, all the properties were annexed in the village, we're looking at 138 accounts with a potential monthly revenue of almost $4,500 on an annual basis. That's close to $54,000. If it's not annexed, we're looking at 113 accounts with a potential monthly revenue of $3,778 and an annual revenue of $45,343.20. Please note that these are estimates and this is only readiness for service fees. There are additional fees that are associated with our municipal services, and they would include things such as actual consumption. So what is the actual consumption of the water, the sewer usage, and electricity? On income tax, this is income tax from construction. As you know, any folks working in our corporate limits, we are able to tax them on their income. So this is our income tax revenue projection should the property be, all the construction projects take place within the village or just a portion of the project. In short, if the entire project, 138 homes are constructed within the village, being if we annexed it, we're looking at a total cost of construction of $38.6 million with a labor cost of $16.6 million. That would yield around $249,228. If it is not annexed, we're looking at a construction value of 9.5 with a 4 million income taxable payroll, and we'll be looking at income tax value or revenue of 61,404. I put the key inputs on the left side of the column just to give you an idea of what's being factored here. We're looking at an industry labor standard of 43% with an average cost of a new home construction first site at $280. These are preliminary numbers. These numbers include some of my best estimates in consultation with the development team from Ober. On property taxes, again, same inputs. Without annexation, we'll be looking at an appraised value of 9.5 million within the village. The way the assessments are done is on a ratio. The assessment ratio for residential property is 35%. So we're looking at an assessed value of $3.3 million. Net property tax over a 10-year period, we can anticipate around $423,948. On a net present value basis for 10-year revenue stream, we're looking at $376,449. If this property is annexed, or the entire parcel is annexed and it's within the corporate limits, we're looking at an appraised value of $38.6 million at an assessment ratio of 35, total assessed value of $13.5 million. A total tax revenue for the village over a 10-year period with annexation, we're looking at $1.7 million in property tax. That has a net present value of $1.5 million. The net present value considers a 2% inflation rate year to year. What would this do to our population and size? This is one of the concerns that I've heard from our community, that we're gonna bust at our seams and overgrow our capacity. So I put this chart up on the presentation to give a visual representation of where our percentage trends have been going back to the 1970s. if you estimate the population decline from 1970 when the village took on a anti-growth sentiment, we have lost nearly 30% of the population from 1970 to 2010. From 1970 to the population estimate of 2019, we've lost of 19% of the population. So this helps put in perspective that we're not busting at the seams, and that our community has had significant more residents than it currently has, and more residents than this development. If it were fully housed at its capacity, we would still be under our 1970 numbers. Now, I've heard the criticism. I'm not adjusting for Antioch College and its large student body and a few other things. But even not adjusting for those, I think there's still plenty of room in our community to welcome more individuals. Next, can our school capacity support this? Can our school support this development? Looking at the open enrollment figures, these are students that come in from the out of the school district. They have around 190 open enrollment. This is based on the 2019 and 2020 school year. I believe I saw Terry Holden join our meeting. So she's here and she may be able to provide more information. In conversation with school leadership, I understand that there's current capacity in the school system. And in fact, it will go beyond a step further, that the school needs more families and needs more students. All right, and in closing, I came across a 2018 New Yellow Springs News article referencing a 1972 report on local housing needs prepared by the League of Women Voters and the Community Planning Committee. And I'll quote from that article. If that world out there does not decrease its demand for housing in Yellow Springs, and we do not attempt to meet some of the demands, we will become more and more of an upper middle class community. It continues. We must recognize that if we make a decision not to grow, we are also making a decision to eliminate low and moderate income families from our community. This is 1972. You have a more recent study from the Bowen Housing Assessment that says our community is getting whiter, wealthier, and older. And I'll leave it with that. Brian, I hope I answered all the questions from council. Did I miss anything?
Josue, I think that was a great overview, and I'm gonna let council ask questions in a minute, and then we definitely want to hear from Superintendent Terry Holden and others. Two things I want to clarify. So, Josue, your income tax projections are just income tax on the construction of the residential development itself, right?
Yes, that's correct. And Denise and John and myself had a conversation earlier about what income tax could be captured from the population that will reside in these properties. And we needed a few more inputs to be able to present some numbers. But I think you're getting to that same place where we were discussing that there will be folks that would be living in this development that we will be able to collect ongoing income tax revenue that will be of tremendous benefit to the village and the school district.
Right. And then the second thing is, can you just confirm what's the number where you go from a village to a city, and how much does that really matter?
5,000. And then how much of that really matters? We're very far from it. That's something I think that we could put together a report to go into greater detail on. Okay. Unless Brianne, you feel confident being able to.
As far as how much that really matters, the distinction between the village and the city, I could probably talk for 2 hours about that. But annexation, whether you're a city or a village, if you're a municipality, annexation lets you control the destiny of that particular property that's annexed. It doesn't let the county do it. It doesn't let the township do it. It lets you as the municipality do it.
Okay.
And Brian, I think that's a good point. I meant to state more on this, that, and I briefly mentioned it, that the annexation should be heard in its own merit. And there's so much value based on, just Brianne said it, there's so much value in it being annexed the village has an opportunity to weigh in on what gets developed there. I think we have community values and goals that can also be met if we're at the table.
All right. Thank you, Josue. I'm gonna, because I appreciate that Terry has, she joined us from the get-go here, and I know how much is going on in your life. Terry, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to speak next, and then we'll hear from council members.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. I want to thank the council for the opportunity to speak at tonight's meeting. You know, this past summer has been one of unrest with the chaos around COVID-19 and more importantly, the protest against police brutality and the murder of Black men and women in their custody. This has been the impetus for the district, for Yellow Springs Schools, to examine our practices, policies, and procedures that are both consciously and unconsciously biased and racially motivated, so that we might actively work to make the school system anti-racist. As the village, and I did not realize Josue was going to say this, but as the village has become older, whiter, and wealthier, now is the perfect time for us to look internally and craft an approach to education that is rooted in a diverse, equitable, and socially just philosophy. Connected to all this is the issue of housing. Schools need families and families need housing. A considerable number of our open enrollment families indicate that they would choose to reside in Yellow Springs if they could obtain affordable family housing. We have the capacity as a school system. It is not the purview of Yellow Springs Schools to determine which land should be developed and which should not. The housing development as proposed with the annexation on the Strewing Farm, with a combination of, from what I've read, over 88 single-family homes and perhaps 50 duplexes, is certainly a start to increasing housing availability in the village. But a price point beginning around $280K really is not affordable for some families. As a strong presence in the community, Yellow Springs Schools supports absolutely new housing in the village. We feel that housing at all price points will help make both the village and the schools more diverse and inclusive, and will help us live the values we so easily espouse. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Holden. And yeah, I think, you know, it's really important for us to think about the impacts of these decisions on, you know, all aspects of being a thriving village. So thank you. So I'm gonna ask any council members if they have questions or comments next. Marianne?
Yeah. So just a little bit of information, and then I'll list my question. I figure that we could probably have about 500 to 600 plus homes built in the village and still not meet 5,000 population. I'm figuring 2 to 2.5 people per housing unit, which is approximately correct. We have a lot of, and we'll continue to have a lot of one-person households, two-people households. And nationally, only about 30% of the housing units have children in them. So I think we need to think about that when we're thinking about how many housing units we increase. So the question that, or my request actually, is that Josue has put together a proposed development timeline. And I don't know that we need to go through all of it, but I think it would be very helpful, especially for people listening to and watching this, to understand exactly what it is that we're proposing to affirm tonight, and then a couple of the next steps. I mean, how does annexation service resolution, what's the difference between that and annexing? And then just sort of a broad brush view of how long it would take from tonight to probably when I think this goes into March. So I think that would be very helpful for Josue to give a little bit more detail about that.
All right, Josue?
Brian, I'm sorry, yes, I have an update on that. At 5 p.m., the township met today to review the annexation agreement, and it passed. I think if the hearing lasted 5 minutes, I think that I might have overcounted the time there, but it passed. They seem very motivated and excited to see this happening. So that's the first step. They've passed the resolution for the support of the annexation agreement. In your packet, there's a timeline, a preliminary timeline that we put together. We being the clerk of council, the zoning administrator, public works, and Brianne Parcels, our village solicitor. So it's in the packet. I'm happy to reference the timeline that we put together. What we're discussing today is the extending the municipal utilities to that parcel. That's what you're voting on today, which begins the process for annexation. After this resolution's passed, and the township has passed their resolution approving the annexation service agreement, the petitioner can then go to Greene County to start the petition process. And once that gets filed and approved by the Board of County Commissioners, it comes back to us to continue that annexation process. So we're looking at the actual annexation documents coming before council on the December 7th meeting. That takes 2 hearings. So we estimate being able to get through that December 21. So you see there's 2 points of engagement with the citizens there. The developer, and again, this is preliminary still, and the annexation has to be considered separate from the project, from the development project, but the developer has been transparent on what the intentions are. And so we put together the timeline on what we think needs to happen. And that includes a zoning change that would need to come to Planning Commission. So that can happen on January 4th. And January 19th, council can accept the recommendation from Planning Commission regarding the zone change. And that will require an ordinance approval. February 2nd of 2021, we could have the first reading of the ordinance to change the zoning. And February 17th, a second reading and passage of the ordinance to change the zoning. That includes a public hearing. And then around March, the final development plan can go to Planning Commission. This process can take as long as 1 meeting or multiple meetings. And if approved, construction can begin. So I think to Mary Ann's point, this is a lengthy process with several opportunities for public input. Judy, Brianne, did I miss anything?
I would just add that once we get the documents back from the county, there's a mandatory minimum of 60 days before council has final action on whether to accept the annexation.
Okay, thank you. Mary Ann, did you have anything else at this point?
There was a discussion about having a work session with the developer and council that I would like to put into the calendar at some point next month, I would assume.
Okay.
That's all I would say right now.
Okay, great. Laura, any comments?
Yeah, so the annexation agreement, and this is maybe directed to Brianne, I made the comment that it had paragraph 3.3 requires us to do mediation. And, it just as not that mediation is bad, it's good, but as a general principle, governments don't agree to mediate. Sometimes we have to go get an injunction or we have to do something else. So why would that still be in there?
Part of the reason is because we're in Greene County, where if we were to file for an injunction, we'd have mandatory mediation between both parties anyway, because we're both in Greene County.
I don't know that it's mandatory. I've been in court many times. I mean, the judges, they highly recommend it and they try to strong arm people to do it, but you know. So I wish that was out of there. And then the bigger question, and I do want to say this to members of the public who've written us about council and the planning commission, and in our review of the subdivision regs, we are very sensitive to the issue of active recreation play spaces. So when that comes through planning commission on a subdivision this big, that will certainly be a consideration. And the other concern in the letters had to do with the roadways. And I do have a question about that, because Spillane is sort of like a really good country road. And I am concerned we are going to have to spend money. We, the village taxpayers, spend money to upgrade Spillane. The other way out of the subdivision looks like, what is that street? Goes to Cahoe. I want to say Miami, but I'm not sure that's right. In any event, what is that one?
South.
Yeah, well, you know. Anyway, but Spillane probably needs a drop-off lane or something, you know? Have we thought about the cost of the upgrades to the roadway and how that's going to be achieved?
I believe Johnny may have some more input on that. I know he's had some discussion on the maintenance.
We have not put much discussion into how that all plans out because we have not really seen drawings or anything like that.
I mean, that's the one kind of hidden cost I can see here to the village is we're going to need to upgrade at least that roadway probably.
And that can be addressed as part of the development agreement, separate from the annexation agreement.
Correct.
Thank
And
you.
we anticipate having need not just to do road improvements, but also sidewalks, parks, and a few other things. And the developer is clear about those expectations and requirements. This is what they do. They do development sites all the time. And George is on the line and Greg's on the line. I think those are items that we anticipate addressing and resolving for the community.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Lisa?
Sure. Hi, thanks. You know, I have to say that since the last council meeting, I've thought a lot about the challenge of separating the decision about annexation to the proposed development, you know, because those two things are difficult to untangle in my mind. So I do have a couple of questions and then a statement I want to make. So, you know, I've only been on council. I'm going into my third year. So there's a lot of history about this property that I'm not, you know, 100% up to speed on. I've tried to do my research. But in regards to our requirement to provide municipal utilities, regardless of annexation or not, is it correct that some acres of this property we are already required to provide municipal utilities, even if we do not annex, if it's developed?
I believe that's the case as a result of a 2014 court case.
And do we know what percentage of the property we're required to provide municipal utilities, whether or not we annex?
I would have to get that documentation for you, Lisa.
Okay. I mean, to me, it's like we're going to be on the hook for a certain cost, whether we annex this property now or not. And if we do approve the annexation, I think the answer to this is yes. Does the village then receive all the resultant tax revenue? It's the village if we annex, right? Period.
Yes, if we annex, we get the income tax and property tax.
Okay. And is it correct that, I'm not exactly sure on this, but if we do not annex, that the township rules are that you have to have 3 acres to build a house?
Not in this area. I believe it's 10,000 square feet lots. They changed their zoning a few years ago and created some residential A1 zoning. So they actually would allow for residential zoning on larger, not as large lots. It wouldn't be 3 acres. And I think that probably Ober is very up on that, on what would be allowed.
And what is the difference in the total scale of development in terms of that if we don't annex and we go with their rules of how big this development could be versus if we annex and go with a higher density?
I think that, well, the difference is about 25 houses or dwellings. But the majority of those dwellings would be in the township because that's the larger piece of property. But as you had mentioned, there was a lawsuit some time ago, and the village is obligated to provide water and sewer. We would not be able to provide under annexation the electric. By annexing it all, we either way we have to provide the sewer and water, from my understanding, and then we would also be able to provide the electric. And of course, we'd also be able to have the income tax revenue as well.
Okay, so thank you. So going back to the statement about the annexation being based on the merits of annexation and not based on the project, I really appreciated, Josue, the quote that you brought forward in the category of everything old is new again, from like 1972, and the concern about affordability. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Holden for her comments about price points and affordability for the kinds of families that we want to draw into the community. I also want to point again to our housing plan and the need for us to definitely focus on mixed income development. And I also want to say, as a businesswoman, that I understand it's not inexpensive to build high quality homes. And so all of a sudden saying that I'm only approving this on its merits, but on the other hand, I'm thinking to the future. Personally, as a liaison from council to the Planning Commission, along with Laura Curlis, it will be important for me in the future to see a plan that accommodates a range of income levels. And I know that's a hard needle to thread. So, but I register my support only if somehow that is possible in this development. And as Laura Curlis commented, meeting the village zoning regarding green space, playgrounds, green boundaries, and that sort of thing. Those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Kevin Stokes?
Yes, thank you, Brian. Well, of course, the more everyone else talked, a lot of my questions got answered, or a lot of the things I was going to say were previously stated. But just a couple of things about the population growth towards that ceiling, if you will, or that boundary of 5,000. Did Patty Bates, as part of her departure, was there not a requirement for her to do some report about that, the ramifications thereof, and how to prepare as we approach that number? No need to answer that question necessarily right now, but just to remind everyone that there should be some information available in that regard. And Josue, thanks for the overview. I mean, it was fantastic. You really answered a lot of questions. But Denise, you mentioned, if you're still there, the difference of 25, and I saw that difference. So does that consist of right-of-ways, that drop off of 25 houses, whether we annex or don't annex, in terms of the max number of houses?
I think that was, if you're doing township zoning, which is the larger parcel, they have like 10,000 square foot lots. So this would be bigger lots, bigger homes. If you do the village zoning, and we can do a medium density, which would also in RB or in a PUD could allow for some duplexes, that would help to lower the cost of, like with duplexes, and we might get into a little bit more affordable range. And I'm not talking low income here. I mean, this is a very expensive property to begin with. And that residential area of town is low density. And so this development would be, designed in a way that would try to, keep the character of that end of town, but still providing some ability for some lower priced homes, which you could do through something like a duplex.
Okay. On that note, I presume that there would be some, once we annex, and I do anticipate us moving forward with annexation, but do we anticipate making some zoning changes on top of what's currently existing once that's additional property is part of the village?
I mean, it will come in as RA, which is your lowest density.
Mm-hmm.
The developer could ask for RB zoning. More than likely, it would probably be developed completely as a PUD because they would probably maintain still decent size of lots. But in a duplex setting, you have what's called a zero lot line. And we don't have it in any of our codes to allow for an actual lot split on a zero lot line unless you do a PUD. So more than likely that would be the route they would go.
Good.
And I'm guessing at this point, I have shared that with them, but I've not heard back from them what direction they would want to go.
Good. Well, it's good to know that we have those tools in our zoning
Toolbox,
toolkit,
definitely.
as it were.
Definitely.
I won't spend much more time on this, but other than to say that in my deliberations and trying to get my head around things, I looked at the housing needs assessment again. I looked at the comprehensive land use plan. And I, as has been said earlier, just want to ensure that we are taking all of those thoughts into consideration. I don't see where anyone is advocating for a departure from what we've talked about already. And I'm happy to hear that there are already some preliminary discussions regarding sidewalks, parks, and things of that nature. Other than some of the citizens on the call, I'm going to submit that I am the person that lives physically closest to this potential annexed area and development. So regardless of what that would mean to me and my household, I would be in favor of us taking advantage of this opportunity to do something that doesn't necessarily sound progressive, but we've passed opportunities in our past. We've forewent opportunities to develop, to welcome businesses. And I think given a second opportunity or even a third opportunity to look at that again, Brian talked about Cresco Labs. There was a time in our recent history where that wouldn't have happened, but now they're here. We've been struggling with trying to do something with Glass Farm or any other development area, but now I think this is a prime opportunity, and I'm very glad that there's a clear delineation between annexation and development. One might presume that development is a foregone conclusion, but tonight's topic is annexation, And I think based on the numbers and everything that Josue and Dr. Holden have said, it is a big benefit for the residents, for the village, and for the schools. And this is what we've been trying to do for too long. And I think we should just have a more progressive attitude about it and try to find a way that works for everyone involved. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Kevin. And, you referenced the schools again, and we do have Stephen Kahn, the president of the Wyeth Schools Board. And Stephen, we'd love to hear your perspective on how this affects the schools.
Thanks so much, Brian. It's lovely to see you all, if only two-dimensionally. We're still weird in this world. I appreciate very much the opportunity, the invitation to come and talk about this. And I actually want to start with the distinction that Lisa Krieger made. What I will speak to right now has nothing to do with the merits or otherwise of particular development schemes, but about the concept of the annexation altogether. The schools have been very clear that we need two things going forward if we're going to have a viable district. We need more families with kids, and we need to expand the real estate property tax base in order to make anything that the schools do in the future more affordable for everybody. Because the schools are disproportionately funded in this state through property tax revenues, it puts a squeeze on everybody. And so if we can increase the size of the pie, it means everybody's slice that they have to contribute gets smaller. And given what we heard during the last levy campaign, the cost of new school projects loomed large in people's imaginations. So we feel as a district that anything we can do to expand the base of our property tax revenue will be good for everybody. And likewise, if we build housing where we can attract young families with children who we can put in the schools, that too will be a long-term benefit to the district and really to the village as a whole. I'd be happy to answer more questions, but I think that really is the gist of it. And Superintendent Holden, I don't know if you want to tag team with me here or not.
Thank you, Steve. I've already spoken, and I think my take was different from yours, but I think together we're the complete package.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for those comments, Steve. That really, kind of helps distill, I think, some of the things that we're considering. Shirlisa, I saw that you had some comments in the chat and might want to say something.
Yeah, Shirlisa has asked me to read her chat comments.
Okay.
Okay. She says, I don't know if I missed this, but I wanted to say that I really dislike that somehow there is a thought that $300,000 supports low and middle income people. Yellow Springs used to support having open land, and now houses are cluttered on top of each other. King Street's new housing place is cluttered, and there is no housing for apartments for middle class besides nearly slum places. The idea that you want to bring in more people, but those people are just bringing in money for the village and not even for a purpose or sense. They built Midwest when I was in high school, and now it is empty. What is planned for that building? Because it seems that things in town are being built and then let go. A new fire station, the old one isn't changed to anything worthwhile. Also, why allow people to have rent be $725 for a one-bedroom that is literally a room big? Why not restrict how the prices are in the village? Because the problem is how the people in this town rent and sell.
All right, thanks for those comments, Shirlisa. We are certainly mindful of the affordable housing aspects and opportunities in thinking about this. I think at this point, I don't know if George or Greg, you want to make any comments. We've heard a lot of thoughts and would love to get your input at this point.
Sure. My name is George Dover. I wanted to make sure that the council was aware that the total project size is about 55 acres. Of the 55 acres, 22 of which approximately are already in the village. And the current zoning is actually pretty acceptable to us as a developer. About 33 acres are in the township. The township zoning is also not a bad zoning. If we were to develop the entire property as it's currently zoned, we could develop about 113 homes. We would like to look at a creative plan with the village, if it's annexed, to develop perhaps up to 138 homes. Now, obviously, if we do 138 homes, that would mean a more affordable lot because we're getting 25 more units on the property. But with or without annexation, the village would already be providing most of the utilities, certainly sewer and water to all of the 55 acres, electric to 22 acres. But we haven't talked about the details. But the village staff, by the way, has been outstanding to deal with. Josue and his team have provided excellent answers to all of our questions. And obviously, as you saw in Josue's presentation tonight, he's done a lot of work on this. And we appreciate that very much. We do think that we can provide a higher quality project if it's annexed into the village. We think it would be a benefit to the village because you will have a lot more say in the ingredients that will go into this end product. So, we understand the desire and we would like to provide multiple different types of housing as well. But we'll get into the short grass with the staff and planning commission and council after we get through the annexation process, but to see what the possibilities are to that end. But the development costs are not getting any cheaper, and it's extremely difficult to build homes anymore, particularly on a single family lot that is, not going to be closer to the $300,000 range than the $200,000 range. It's getting more difficult, and we're doing this in 3 different counties right now, and Greene County is no different than any other county. We've seen the cost of lumber raise house prices by about $15,000 a home just in the last few weeks. Lumber has just gone off the charts, and drywall and concrete and other building materials follow behind it. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions, though. Again, we haven't gotten into the specifics of the engineering, and we do understand that we're going to be making some improvements, some road improvements on the perimeter. Spald, I think it's Spillane Road. Yeah. So we've already talked about some of that with the staff and some of the other desires with sidewalks and curbs and whatnot. We understand that the village has subdivision standards and regulations, and that we have to abide by those. And we take no issues with that.
All right, thank you, George. And, we appreciate hearing, the idea that we can collaborate on, making this a project that's a really good, fit for everyone. Greg, did you want to add anything or?
No, I just came to support George. I know Brian's known me for several years now in my time in the Planning Commission, but I am a certified urban planner and regional planner. Been with the Oberg Company for almost 20 years now. And pride myself in going through creative neighborhood developments, and have done things all over Greene County, Montgomery County, and Warren County as well. And those of us seen me in the Greene County Planning Commissions over the years, I believe our reputation stands pretty strong for itself, and I'm very proud of that. So I'm happy to work with the village and hopefully can bring a good development to the community.
All right, thanks, Greg. I know we've got a question from Megan Bachman with the Yellow Springs News.
Thank you, Brian. I actually have 2 questions.
All right.
Probably didn't surprise you. My first question, I appreciate the analysis that had all the benefits that the development would bring. I'm wondering if the village has also looked at the costs in the same way, the cost to extend the services, maintain the infrastructure over time, and then just any other potential negatives for the community. Kind of feels like we're only looking at one side of the ledger. I'd like to know that my council members are looking at the whole picture and not just the benefits. And secondly, I'm just still a little confused about this idea that the annexation must be considered separately from the development. It kind of goes against what I was told last week, that the development agreement is actually part of the annexation package, at least a draft version. So I'd just like that clarified again for me. And it kind of begs the question, on what grounds could the village decide to not annex? Thank you so much.
Josue?
I'll jump in on the first part and tag team the second part of that question with Brianne. On the first part, what are the costs associated with providing services? I think we discussed this earlier, that we have a requirement to provide utilities on both sites, both the current property in the village and the property that's up for annexation. In terms of that cost, we have access to sewer and water on the site. So in terms of us getting it to the site, it's already there. There'll be minimal improvement that need to be made, and whatever improvement is to be made there, that's a cost that we will transfer onto the developer as an aid to construction. And Johnny can jump into the details on the aid to construction. But we expect that there's more upside than downside to this in terms of building out the infrastructure for utilities. In my slide, I referenced the utility revenue. This will help us spread the cost of utilities to a larger customer base. So in short, Megan, any cost that will be associated with a construction or our portion of building out the infrastructure to get the utilities to that site, part of that cost will be offset by contributions from the developer, and any other expense that we incur will be covered in revenue on the short run and supporting infrastructure on the long run. To the second part of your question about the development agreement being that that the annexation and the development should be considered as separate items, I will defer to Brianne and jump in where I am able to.
Sure. The annexation agreement on a type 1 is a necessary step for the petitioner to submit a type 1. So the township has already passed the annexation agreement in its current form. If the village proposes any changes additional to the agreement and the township has already passed it, the township would have to accept those changes and also have a new separate resolution accepting the annexation agreement. This annexation agreement for a type 1 petition is the first step to get the petition to the county commissioners. And all it's doing is saying, this is what the township's giving up. This is what the village is accepting in terms of responsibilities for municipal services, being our utilities, but also our roads, parks, police, any municipal services that are going to be provided to the annexed territory. So that's between the township and the municipality. Again, because we're looking at Spillane Road, we looked at, well, the tax revenue from roads and bridges should be applied to Spillane Road, which is coming into the village, not going into the general fund for the rest of the township roads and bridges. So that was a negotiation point between the township and the village. That is why this particular resolution is accepting the annexation agreement and offering the resolution of services, because again, the resolution of services is what the village has to do regardless of whether we have an agreement with the developer or the township. We are obligated under that litigation from 2014. The village has already spent more than $145,000 on to provide utilities to that property. So separately, the development agreement, once we know that annexation is coming, that we are going to be presented with this annexation request. Council acts on the annexation 60 days after it gets it back from the county. During that time, council, village staff can negotiate a development agreement with the developer to address the things like affordability of housing, other public improvements, adding a turn lane on Spillane Road, all of the details that would go into the development can be negotiated as part of the development.
Did that answer your question, Megan?
It does, but I guess, can the village say no? I just try to state it more simply.
That's up to council.
Sure. I think, yeah, we have the option to say no to annexation. We don't have the option to say no to the development. And, I guess I just want to underscore, I think the case is pretty clear what the benefits are to the village, but ultimately what resonates with me, and George and Greg have mentioned this too, is that we're collaborating on, making this as best of a fit for our community as possible. And that's where, I have thought a lot about the costs and the benefits, but that's, I think, resonates a lot with me. Okay, so I know Jillian.
Excuse me, though. This is Lisa Krieger. I just want to comment on one more thing. I mean, it does have to go through planning commission.
Yes.
And then come to the village. So the village council ultimately does have the power to say no.
Right, which is what
to a development.
Right, which is what no to a development. Well, we can't say no to what happens on the township. So what I was highlighting is that, George has has indicated that the township zoning works for them already. So there will be, I mean, it seems to me that there will be a development. So the question is, are we going to be involved in that? So Jillian Ewalt, I saw that you would like to comment.
Hi, I wanted to make a quick comment, and then I think my husband also wants to hop on here and comment as well. So council, from my perspective, I think there are two things that need to be really clear here. The first one is that open spaces have disappeared rapidly in and around this village. And I think we need to start calling this what it is, which is environmental destruction. Second, while affordable housing is absolutely a concern of mine, I am also concerned that this is going to compromise the quality of life for the youngest inhabitants of this neighborhood. As others have mentioned, there are no parks or playgrounds on the south side of town. Others have also mentioned that there aren't even any sidewalks on Spillane. So 200 plus cars will simply congest and crush the quality of life for those kids. And frankly, the serenity that some of us absolutely depend on for mental well-being. Not to mention, these decisions are being made in the midst of a global pandemic when we are all more dependent than ever on access to uncrowded spaces close to home. I grew up in a small town that was similar to Yellow Springs, where every year there was more and more development. These developments paved over natural ecosystems, destroyed habitats, created unsustainable density, and turned humble, seemingly unspecial open space into a commodity, which, let's face it, ultimately is going to accelerate climate change. Furthermore, children are continuously distanced from nature, and please look at the research on the consequences of lack of access to open spaces on mental health and childhood development. You can do something. Council, I urge you to think critically and take a critical lens to every aspect of this project. I recognize your agency in this lengthy process, and I hope the village's vision isn't obscured by the allure of short-sighted benefits, particularly those it might receive from packing more people into these spaces, and all at the cost of the environment and neighborhoods. So exploiting the environment for money is a tale as old as time. Right now, I'm asking you to take the long view and to be an ally for the youngest inhabitants of this community, which have to grow up in this space and live with the short and long-term consequences of our choices. And I just wanted to leave you at this, with this. At what point can we no longer call Yellow Springs a village?
Thanks, Jillian. Did you say Mark was going to jump on or?
He does. He's coming right over.
Okay.
And the baby. Hi, guys. Yeah, I am worried about the sidewalks, the lack thereof sidewalks. It does feel like Spillane is like a thoroughfare. And having no sidewalks, if someone's on the street walking, the car has to go into the middle and then you can't pass. And that's not the only street that doesn't have a sidewalk down here. Meadow and Orton and Hyde Road doesn't have sidewalks. And there's also a lot of traffic that comes in by Dollar General that comes through those 3 streets, Edgefield, Miami, or Lisa, to go through the other side of town. And I don't know if you can put stop signs or speed humps or speed bumps to slow down the traffic, or say like a no throughway through this side of town. I've had a few conversations with a handful of neighbors, and they were really caught off guard about developing, the proposed development nearby, and maybe would have reconsidered if they knew that was going to be developed before they bought their house. It seems, we're all surprised, and it just seems like it's getting the green light to go through. So those are some of our thoughts over here, and hopefully they can be considered.
All right, thank you, Mark. I do just want to clarify that sidewalk on Spillane is contemplated in this project, right? Anyone want to?
We've had very, very preliminary discussions because we're not at that point with Ober about what to expect. But one of the big things that we as staff did right at the get-go was say that we have a plan here that's already been approved for walkability and connectivity, and they were totally on board with that. And there will be sidewalks. Now, as far as Spillane, all that's up for negotiation, but definitely sidewalks are a big part of this project.
Okay.
May I add something?
Yes.
We did talk to staff about Spillane, and we would anticipate putting sidewalks on our side of Spillane Road. But, we obviously don't own the other side of Spillane Road.
All right. Do we have any, Kevin, did you have a follow-up question from the chat that I see, or?
Yeah, well, Mr. Ober, this was to you. I'm the Senior Director of Facilities and Technology at Antioch College, and I'm still suffering sticker shock of something as simple as a piece of plywood in the last few months. But, and I did put put this question in the chat, and I do know that if you price a job out now at current material costs, which we perceive is inflated due to COVID-related supply chain anomalies, might we see some of those numbers come down in the I'm praying that the pandemic is over by the time we break ground at mid-year. But that being the case, where prices would tend to come down as supply chains loosen, might your cost estimates come down with them?
Oh, I would agree. Yes, there's no doubt they're affected by the current pandemic. And we would expect that to relax somewhat as we get closer to breaking ground on this project.
Okay, great. I'm not asking for a commitment for a new price structure yet, but just the anticipation that things could come down as other situations change.
I'm praying with you.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you. Well, I do want to say I appreciate the broad discourse. I think there are some important issues to consider, which is part of why, again, I think it's important to be at the table around these discussions. Are there any other questions or comments before we take a vote on the resolution? Lisa?
None from me.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if that was a hand. Okay. Judy, I think we're ready to call the roll then.
All right. Curlis,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
And again, I want to emphasize, as we saw in the timeline, this is a multi-month process, and there are going to be a lot more conversations about this. So thanks, George. Thanks, Greg. We appreciate you guys being here. And we're going to move into the last of our legislation.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Judy, let's do 2020-40 by title only.
Okay, this is authorizing the village manager to submit an Ohio Environmental Protection Agency grant application.
Can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, Josue.
All right, thank you, Brian. We have an opportunity to pursue funding from the Ohio EPA on a settlement related to what's titled the Diesel Mitigation Trust Fund. Little background on this: Volkswagen got caught cheating, and they have to pony up some money to mitigate diesel emissions. So the Ohio is making grant opportunities for electric vehicle charging stations, level 2 charging stations. Our top priority will be to replace the John Bryan Center Tesla charger to this universal level 2 charger. So we're applying for a grant. We would like your authorization to move forward with this grant. Now, we've also received a request from the libraries to consider the library a site for the electric vehicle charger. And what we're thinking about it, electric vehicles are the future. They are the future, and I think that here's an opportunity where we can get 100% of the cost of level 2 chargers covered through this grant. So I'm proposing that we apply for the following locations: John Bryan Center, the library, Gone Park, and Corey Street parking lot. And, they will be free, both the charge itself and the installation. So if we get it, it will be a great asset to our community. And I've included in the package, the grant limits. So for dual ports, we can request up to 15,000 or 100% of the eligible cost, whichever is less. And I've also included a county map of which areas are priority 1 and priority 2. With us being in Greene County, we are at a level 2. We're second priority. So we would have access to funding if there's funding left over from that first priority counties. I'll take your questions now.
All right, yeah. Any questions or comments for Josue?
Yeah, Josue, you had said, if I heard correctly, your plan is to replace the Tesla only charger that's at John Bryan?
Yes, correct. We're experiencing some challenges with that charger. One, that's very specific to one type of vehicle and no other vehicle can charge. Two, there's no data connection to it, and Tesla has been a bit less than cooperative on in making improvements to be able to capture data on it. So we don't know things like what's the usage, what the number of vehicles, who those users are. We just don't have access to any data like we do with the SIMA Connect charger that's right next to it.
Is the Tesla charger, I believe it is with a Tesla vehicle, the Tesla charger more effective or more efficient or faster in terms of getting you to a full charge?
I think that's debatable. Obviously, the Tesla charger is made uniquely for Tesla, so it's meant to work only with the Tesla and optimizes the connection capability between the two. I think that a universal charger system could debate that, whether whose is better for what vehicles.
Okay, great, thank you.
Johnny, did I miss anything?
The Tesla chargers are a little bit heavy duty or charger. They do charge the Teslas a little bit faster than the SEMA ones, but they also take a lot more power.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right.
I have one question, Brian, for council. I've included what are our top priority sites. Does the council think of a site that we failed to include?
The Corey Street lot, you mean the one by the old fire station?
Correct.
That seems to be like a super high use lot. Like, I'm not sure I'd want to tie up a space there, but that'd be me.
Okay. Any other feedback on locations?
Josue, in terms of priorities, you did acknowledge that we're level 2 from as far as the state funds are concerned. Excuse me. So if it comes out that we don't end up getting quite as much or to be able to afford as many stations as possible, will we reevaluate your priority within the village then?
The order in which I put them in there, they're in our priority order. The John Bryant Center, because we would like to replace that Tesla. The library, because they requested it and it would be a great site. Gone Park, it has plenty of space. And so Corey Street will be next.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Judy, you want to call the roll, please?
Thank you. Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, let's do resolution 2020-41 again by title only.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to submit an Ohio Public Works Commission grant application.
All right, I'd love to get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Josue.
All right, Brian, this is a particularly difficult one because that we have to bring it up because it's something that the government has known for over 50 years. When I came on board, Johnny and I got working on what are all the infrastructure projects we needed to work on, stormwater management, and this stormwater system underneath the businesses at Dayton Street is one of them and is top priority. As you know, we've requested money from the Ohio State Capital Appropriations to do this work. We were turned down. The funding was no longer available due to COVID. We've continued our pursuit to get whatever money we could to reroute this line. In our research, we learned that for over 50 years, the government has known that this line needed rerouting. I've included up select pages from a study back in 1966, and what Johnny came up as a solution with the engineers is the same solution that a group studied back in 1966. So this is, it's been a known issue. Nothing has been done about it for 50 years. We need to do it. We don't have the money, so we're pursuing this grant opportunity with the Ohio Public Works Commission. I've included a couple options in their preliminary scoring based on our knowledge of the scoring sheet and our consultant's knowledge of the scoring sheet. So I've included those options there in the packet. We are asking for authorization for option G. This would allow us to score 61 points, and we would have to make a local match of 16%, amount totaling $83,631.52 of the overall expected project cost, which is $522,697. The difference between our local match and the total project cost will be made up by the grant that we're requesting from the Public Works Commission, and that grant request totals $439,065.48. From the attachment we've included in the packet, you'll see that we've included several options, 9 options to be exact. Of them, based on the finances, option G, we feel that it is our best option, one, because we limit our contribution and from a scoring perspective, we're right in the middle of the pack of all the options. Our most competitive option would be option A, but that requires a 50% match and a 50% loan. There's no free money there. So that's a heavy lift for us given where our financial resources are. It's a heavy lift given that we don't have a stormwater management utility, so we don't have dedicated revenue for stormwater management. So we're presenting option G. Unless council would like to allocate more cash to this project, we recommend option G. Johnny, did I miss anything? All right, we'll take your questions.
Well, Josue, can you highlight why this is an important project? Because I'm not sure, everybody's up to speed on what we're talking about.
Absolutely. So the businesses along Dayton Street have a stormwater sewer line that runs behind the property, and some of it is underneath the property. We've had issues of water flowing into the properties, commercial properties. We've had sinkhole issues just a couple months. I think it was, Johnny, was it May 1st? We were right in the middle of the early part of the pandemic. The maintenance hole just collapsed. And we were really worried that we were looking at the final legs on this thing. But we were able to make an immediate repair and restore the integrity to the maintenance hole. But that's just a Band-Aid fixed on it. If this line were to collapse, not to be an alarmist, but we would have sinkholes in areas we couldn't estimate now. It could be behind the laundromat where it has occurred, or it can be behind one of Bob Baldwin's buildings. It's not a new issue. Again, the government has known this since 1966. We're trying to tackle it now. Johnny, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we need to point out is this is a laid up limestone, no mortar storm line. It was probably put in the late 1800s, and it needs to be replaced because it's falling down, it's water seeping through it, and it actually goes all the way to Winter Street. So it goes from the John Bryant Center all the way to North Winter.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
And Brian?
This is Lisa. Go ahead, I'll wait. I have a comment, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just putting it up on the screen because I realized that maybe the visual would help folks what line we're talking about. So I've got it here. Johnny, do you want to walk us through it? Okay, I might have lost Johnny. So we're talking about this dotted line here. This is the proposed rerouting of the line right here. So we're proposed, this is the reroute as it was proposed back in 1966. The current line drainage runs right through here. This, the map is not exact, but the line runs right back here. And it says right here, existing laid up stone. So we'll be rerouting that line. Okay.
Lisa, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I mean, I knew when I came on council, probably as others did as well, that some of these expensive infrastructure projects have been deferred way too long. And we already heard earlier a 1972 thing about affordable housing, and now we're reaching back to 1966. I mean, at a certain point, we know that we're in difficult financial times with the novel coronavirus, but come on, we've got to get this done, period. So, I mean, I agree that option G is absolutely the best financial business case. My question is, what's our, best alternative to that agreement? So if G falls through, if we apply for this and G falls through, what do we do next, knowing that this has to get done? Thanks.
Our worst case scenario would be that it collapses and we have to get a loan to cover the full expense of the repair.
What would be the timeline, do you think, on this process to apply and find out if we get it or not?
If we would know this year, and we would have to allocate our local match for 2021. So
and if we go forward with one option and it's unsuccessful, we're stuck?
We are not stuck. There are other funding that's available through OPWC. The loan option is always at the table. We can always go out to OPWC for loans.
So I don't know how I feel about this, but I would like to hear from other council members if we should go for something, an option, which, I mean, I agree, G is the sweet one, right? But should we go forward with one where we have a higher likelihood of getting it, even if it means a loan, versus going for the sweetest spot and the risk that we won't receive the grant? I would like to hear from others.
Right. So Lisa, I mean, I share the same concerns, and Josue, I guess, I mean, you said that 61 score is right in the middle, and there's not a lot of swing in the scores that I'm seeing. So I presume you could go way lower than 61, but certainly, just going from 61 to 70, I mean, that has us spending a lot of money up front and spending a lot of money over time with respect to paying a loan. But are those 3, 4, 5, 9 point swings? I mean, is that a big difference in the scoring?
Well, on the scoring itself, the point difference, yes, going from 61 to 73, that's a sizable, that's a 12-point difference. That's almost 20% point swing. But you look at the commitment to get a score 73, you're taking half of it in loan and the other half you're putting up the money. There isn't a whole lot of value being captured through a grant process there. For that case, we might as well go to OPWC out of the grant cycle and request a 0.1% loan on out of their cycle. So I wouldn't see that necessarily as a great option. There isn't a whole lot of financial value to be captured from the grant process.
Yeah. So I guess as long as there are other options that we can fall back on, referring to this as the sweet spot, I think is appropriate because it's the least amount of upfront costs, no ongoing costs. And if we get it, great. And if we don't, as long as there are some fallbacks to avoid the worst case scenario.
Correct.
And historically, when we haven't gotten grants from OPWC, we've been able to get, follow up and get a loan. So I think Josue is thinking about this the right way.
Yeah, and Brian, excellent point. Johnny's ran several different models with a consultant, and Johnny's back card is that, we don't get this, we'll set ourselves up for another grant opportunity and a loan. Johnny, you want to add anything to that?
I think it's important to remember this structure that we're getting ready to replace and put in can have a loan for the life of the infrastructure, which is 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the life of the new sewer line would be 30 years. So you can get a 30-year loan on the sewer line. But I think we need to go with the option G, see what OPWC does this time, and then we would be able to tell moving forward, if we get it, great. If we don't, we can go to another option.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully they're not watching and know that we are willing to take that loan option up front.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we take a vote? All right, Judy.
Yes, McQueen. McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Ausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And last, resolution 2020-42, title only, please.
All right. This is implementing provision of recycling services by apartment complex owners.
Josue. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Josue.
Thank you, Brian. And this has been a team effort. Mary Ann McQueen introduced this idea at, I believe, at least one council meeting ago, and it was a recommendation from the Environmental Commission that it wants to do more on to have a greater impact on the environment. And they asked us to look into making recycling required on commercial properties. So based on the request from Marianne and council, we followed up on this, and Brianne and I worked on looking at our current ordinances and see what we're able to do within the current ordinances. And it looks like we have the authority, the enforcement mechanism and noticing mechanism to make recycling required at commercial properties, multifamily commercial properties. So this resolution's here. We're asking you to make the intentions clear and authorization that we can move forward with implementing the provisions within the recycling services ordinance at the apartment complexes. In short, the section 1060.03 and 1060.04, as previously enacted, allow us to expand recycling services to these multifamily and enforce that recycling services. Brianne, you want to add anything?
Sums it up.
Okay. I think this is an important step forward as we think about what are recycling programs around the world, what impact it has around the world. I've been educating myself on the marketing tactics of big oil and other plastic manufacturings. I also read a study done, a research done with NPR and a few other news outlets that we've been misled about recycling both domestically and internationally. And while this particular activity enforces the recycling requirement, we're also looking at reducing our overall production of waste and recyclables, because I think that's our most viable step, is reducing the waste that we put out.
All right. Thanks, Josue. Marianne, did you want to add anything?
Well, I think I said at a previous council meeting after EC tried to wrangle around what kind of things we could do to encourage recycling. This seemed like the easiest. And of course, I don't think at that time we didn't even know that it's already within the village government purview. So multifamily housing units at this point in Yellow Springs, unless the landlord is doing something that I don't think most of them are, or unless the residents, the tenants are, they have no options for recycling, and that's just not right. So totally support this.
All right. Thanks, Marianne. I see a question from Megan. Will there be fines for property owners who do not offer it? How will it be enforced?
There is a permitting and enforcement mechanism, and we will utilize all the tools at our disposal, including fines. So I will work with the village solicitor on what kind of monetary fines and other penalties we can put in place. Obviously, our intention is not to go out and cite people and get money into the coffers of the village. Our goal is to ensure that their recycling options being made available to the residents. And we are going the extra step where we would offer our own solid waste services to these apartment complexes to ensure that there are no barriers, artificial barriers to the recycling. So if a multifamily owner says they're happy to comply, but they just don't have the contracts lined up, we are happy to switch them over to our municipal solid waste services.
Okay, thanks, Josue. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, Judy, let's call the vote, please.
Yes, Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. And we're now on citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda where we welcome comments up to 3 minutes on any item that's not on the agenda. Judy, is North Star calling in?
She was, and she said that she was on earlier.
Okay. All right, well, she comes in, let me know.
I see a phone number that popped in, 9272.
And she would have been phoning, so that sounds right.
Okay.
So do we have North Star then? That sounds like her number.
I'm omitting it and then I'll replace the name just so that we don't put out her cell phone number to the public.
Okay.
North Star? Is that right?
If that is North Star.
North Star, if you can hear us, your line is open and you can raise your comment or concern.
The Yellow Springs News does have a question for citizen concerns. She's saying if you want to give Ursa a minute.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, Megan.
Thank you. It's just about, I'm glad that you guys are having that work session tomorrow. I'm wondering where the conversation is in terms of having in-person meetings again. If you're still looking at that, especially as now that I thought that you had the capability of live broadcasting, which I'm curious why tomorrow's isn't. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. What was that last part, Megan, about the live broadcasting?
I thought that you had figured out that you could do live broadcasting of public meetings from the gym.
Okay, so got it.
Can I just address that for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just work sessions we've never live broadcasted is 4 minutes of grueling intensity. I mean, it's really a work session that's we've just never live streamed them, first. And second, we did try to do a BZA meeting from the gym, and it was very, very difficult to hear one another and get clarity on who was commenting on things. And it did not go as smoothly as anticipated. I know that Josue's made improvements to some technology since then, but that experience sort of had us back off from trying to do live meetings in the gym for a bit.
So I think the other piece, in answer to your question, Megan, is that we've continued to think about how we transition back to in-person meetings, and we were hoping that we would have the tent and the temperature to work with us, because I think everyone feels a lot more comfortable with being outdoors. So I think this is we're going to try this out, especially because I think this work session, it'll be good for us to be in person. So where we're at is it's a work in progress, but we're going to see how tomorrow goes, and start to evaluate, where everybody's comfort level is. Okay. So do we have North Star? Do we have any other citizen concerns? Okay. I think we're going to move it forward then and get into our special reports. And we are very happy to have Aaron Sorrell again here this evening. Aaron, thanks for waiting patiently. And we are going to hand the reins over to you to tell us where we're at with our comprehensive land use plan.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, everybody. So, excuse me. Today, what I thought I would do is run through a quick slide deck, just a few slides, and then spend most of the time on the future land use map. I'll go over the structure of the actual plan that's on the website, go over the future land use map, and then take some questions, because I know that we do have some time limitations, so I want to make sure that everybody is able to ask some questions. So let me share my screen.
All yours, Aaron.
What's that?
It's all yours.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. So we did have a comprehensive land use plan steering committee. These were the members. We met approximately 5 times throughout the life of the project. So we started this about a year ago. COVID certainly delayed the final product, but we started in September of 2019, and you can see the progression. We had online surveys, the kickoff meeting to begin with, a number of focus group interviews that included businesses, realtors, developers. We talked with the representatives from the school, with Antioch College. The project website, one of the key features of this project was that we had a pretty robust online presence that went live in September, and between September and July of this year, we had about 650 unique visitors for that project, or for the initial website. We were going strong. We had an open house in January at Mills Lawn for the initial results and feedback. We had about 150 attendees at that particular meeting. And then COVID hit and really sort of put the brakes on a lot of efforts, this project included. We regrouped in around April, started working again. We released the draft plan in July on the new website. We had an outdoor open house in August, and then there was a draft of the plan also published in Yellow Springs News. Since the new website went live in July 20th, of the draft land use plan, we've had about 541 visitors, 407 of those have been unique, and we received about 110 comments. Through the life of the process, between the kickoff meetings, surveys, online presence, there are approximately 1,700 what I'll call impressions or interactions. So either survey results, people that attended meetings, or people that engaged on the website, around 1,700 individuals. Now, some of them probably were multiple. They went to the open house, they also filled out a survey, and they were engaged in the website. But over the course of this project, that's how many interactions that we've had. So just a little bit of background. The characteristics of a comprehensive land use plan, there's really 3 characteristics. One is comprehensive, so it encompasses the entire jurisdiction, and in some cases, areas immediately adjacent to that jurisdiction, as compared to a small area plan. They're general. They cover high-level goals, objectives, and we're looking on the long view about how the community can be developed over the next 15 years. And like I said, they're long range. We're not focusing on the immediate, we're focusing on 10, 20 years or so. The purpose of a comprehensive land use plan for those listening in, it's one, to identify the needs of the community, to develop those goals and policies that directly address those needs, and then help steer some of the operations and investments. You were talking today about significant investments necessary in your infrastructure. This relates to the future land use plan and the comprehensive plan. And lastly, it serves as the legal framework for zoning and subdivision decisions made by both the plan board or the BZA and ultimately village council. Based on the public engagement, these were the planning priorities that emerged. They are not in priority order. They're simply a list. One is to protect the surrounding agricultural and rural nature of the area, provide a diversity of living options, improve the economic diversity, both of the individuals and of the village, protect key environmentally and culturally sensitive areas, embrace sustainability, maintain the character of Yellow Springs, looking at providing diverse transportation options that enhance mobility for all ages, and then continue to provide high quality public services for its residents. So there are 9 chapters within the plan. And so I'm going to jump over to the plan and show you how it's organized. Let's see, here we go. So you should not if you see a website. Okay. So this is the essentially the table of contents of the plan. The various 9 chapters are laid out here. Community trends is exactly what it says, or is like. Hold on, let me mute somebody. There we go. Lays out the past practice or the past historical population trends and also forecasting as we move forward. The community priorities talks about the priorities that occurred throughout that we heard about through the various community and engagement efforts. Part of this project was to bring together all of the various studies that the village has done over the years. So that includes the active transportation plan, for example, the complete streets policy, the housing study that was done last year. All of those various studies, the 3 public works or utility studies that have been completed or are currently ongoing, are all nested and brought into the various chapters. So let me focus on land use because I think that is probably the most important. For those, I'm going to do a couple things, but this is the land use chapter that outlines the various categories of that are proposed both in residential, commercial, and industrial. At the very bottom, if you click launch the web map application, this is where we're going to go. The map is fully online. So this is the future land use map that we are discussing today. Let me turn this off here. One of the things that we are going to do is for the purposes of adopting the resolution, if you choose to move forward, there's going to be a little bit different map, an actual PDF map, because the cartography, the limitations online it looks better if it's in paper. But so the point is here, there are a number of categories for land use for residential. So low, medium, and high density residential. By and large, within the existing village boundaries, those coincide with your current zoning categories for residential. You have an RA, RB, RC. They coincide with low density, medium density, and high density residential. What is significant about this, some of the other land use principles is one of the key growth principles that has been part of Yellow Springs history for many times or many years is the concept of the urban service boundary. And this is the area, this is the area where extension of utilities is feasible. That is outlined in the red. So what we did with this draft plan is that we looked at the future land use plan, looking at a sort of a build out scenario. So we looked at those areas outside of the village boundary, but within the urban service area. We're not proposing any land uses changes of land use outside of this urban service area. And for the most part, when you look at the village, the conservation efforts that have been undertaken or are currently ongoing develops this greenway or green belt around the village, which constrains future development anyway. And so that's one of the things that, for example, to the south and the west, we did not look at any land uses or make any recommendations for those areas that are either intended to be preserved through a conservation easement or outside of the urban growth boundary or urban service boundary. So let me go to the land use. We have two districts that are what we're calling transitional future land use districts. And those are the areas that, just to make this easier to see, if these areas ever stop being agricultural and some developer wants to move forward with development, these are the types of land uses that we think are best suited for this development. In the west area, it is largely light industrial. One of the goals that we heard from the community was needing to broaden the economic base and providing job and economic development opportunities. So that's one reason. The second reason is that these areas are outside of your wellfield capture zone. That's what this green line is. So if there by chance were to happen to be some industrial chemical incident, it is substantially less likely if that development is up here and outside of this area to get into your drinking water system. So what we're proposing is light industrial and very similar to all in-house under roof types of developments, no outdoor storage. This is a main entry point or gateway into Yellow Springs. So all of this development should look attractive. The one area that can go either way, I think, is the area that is the parcel that is immediately east of Enon Road. It is zoned industrial right now by the township. But I think if the land, the Kenny Farm property, or if there were industrial opportunities, or excuse me, residential opportunities, I think it would be appropriate for this to go either way. Talking with township representatives, this was zoned many, many years ago from residential or agricultural to industrial because they thought there potentially could be some industrial growth, but there hasn't been that kind of pressure yet. But surrounding it is largely residential. So if we go south, you can see that these areas, let me zoom out slightly. These areas are significantly closer to your wellfield capture area. And so what we are proposing for the south area is a mixture, let me just go up here so the labels show up, a mixture of residential, higher density residential, and expansion of Gaunt Park. As it was mentioned, the recreation opportunities in south parts of the village are limited. This does make sense if this were to ever transition out of agriculture, that the opportunity to expand Gaunt Park is here. And then focusing on office rather than commercial type of uses. We do not, it's our recommendation not to see retail uses that compete with downtown, which is why the land use that we're suggesting is more office related. To the south, the area that, well, this is the area that was under discussion for annexation. Again, offices along 68, office uses along 68, and then a transition between the currently zoned high density to the north, medium density here that serves as a transition period to the low density to the north of that area. The other thing, the other attributes of this comprehensive land use plan are the integrating the active transportation plan and the thoroughfare plan. So let me pull these off and switch. Let me do this second different. Okay. So changes between this thoroughfare plan and previous thoroughfare plan. The previous thoroughfare plan indicated that Yellow Springs Fairfield Road should be an arterial. It's our suggestion that go from arterial down to a collector designation for a couple reasons. One, if this were ever to be built out as an arterial with the geometry that an arterial roadway requires, that would significantly change the character of that roadway experience. Secondly, until there is the bridge that over the Little Miami Scenic Bikeway Path is lifted or raised or expanded, the amount of truck traffic that you're legitimately going to get is pretty low. So for two reasons, I don't think that this is necessitates to be labeled an arterial. We are suggesting that if you think about future land use development patterns, that Enon and Hyde at some point be considered collectors. It does make sense, I think, if these were to ever be built out as or ever be developed, there will be additional traffic that is generated, particularly on Enon Road. And so moving from a largely rural road to a collector makes sense. It also opens up the ability to finance this a little bit easier. Also integrated is the existing bikeways. I lost the boundary, but it makes it easier. The existing bikeways of Yellow Spring, along with the active transportation plan improvements. So the various bikeway extensions, trail extensions, making those connections that are outlined in the active transportation plan are now incorporated into the thoroughfare plan. Oops. So would you like me to go through the specific recommendations in the plan?
I think that's a good overview. And then, maybe at this point we'll stop and see what questions folks have.
Okay.
Thanks, Aaron. All right. So are there any questions for Aaron at this point?
Well, I have a comment and a question. First, Aaron, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Good. I think that it'll be very helpful for staff and council and residents and businesses to be able to go online and see it online and be able, and for the village to be able to adapt it as we move along. And I also think that apropos to the conversation we were having about the annexation of the housing development, being able to get a sense of what the urban service boundary is, what it means, what it signifies, and how, in terms of the village, that's like the end of where presumably the village would grow. It doesn't solve that tension between environment, maintaining farmland, and vis-a-vis housing, but at least it puts it in perspective. So the question that I have is, I realize that I don't think that I ever provided you with the climate action plan that the Environmental Commission had worked on for a while. And Deward Headley, who had been the champion of this, left EC, so it's been sitting there. But so is it fairly easy to, like, if when we come up with some kind of plan that seems like it could relate, to then have it be linked with the comprehensive land use plan, if it makes sense?
Yeah, so I think for all the plans that I have, and I need to go back and double check, but all the plans that I have are currently linked within this document. So if it references, let's say, the housing plan or the active transportation plan, when you click on that link, it brings up the actual plan in another window as a PDF for that person to then download. If you want to send me the environmental action plan, I can certainly put that up there as a link as well. Or however, it's very simple to integrate that, I guess, is getting to directly to your question.
Okay, I'll talk with Josue.
Okay.
And do that.
Okay. Lisa, were you gonna make a comment?
Yeah, I was. Thank you, Aaron. I also want to thank you for this. So the one thing that would be helpful, I think, for the community members would be if you would just do a little bit of a deeper dive into downtown parking.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because, it seemed as if there was this kind of disconnect, because on one hand, I'm hearing so much from downtown business owners personally related to various initiatives around a parking crisis. And then on the other hand, you weren't hearing anything. So we were trying to address that disconnect.
Yes. Do you see on the screen, you should see the economic development page? Okay.
I see that.
All right, great. So we talk about on this page sort of the three priorities for economic development, and one of them is supporting existing businesses through strategic investment, supporting and strengthening downtown, because that is your job nucleus. And one of those, one of our tasks through this process was to take a look at the parking situations, or the parking environment. We did hear concerns from a few business owners, and in particular the chamber, of parking concerns. It sounded to me, it sounded to me like it was largely a weekend issue, and then it got certainly amplified for street fair. But one of our tasks was to look at ways of better utilizing the existing parking that we have, and providing additional on-street options rather than as a tier one priority. Second tier would be building additional parking lots. That's kind of a lower tier, because you do chew up what limited potential development land you have for parking. So within the plan are a number of scenarios that we looked at. First was looking at reconfiguring the John Bryan Center's parking lot. So at some point, you're going to need to redo the parking lot just because of natural wear and tear and age. If that were striped differently and the utilization and the yield was a little bit better, that would add significantly more parking spaces, up to 160 parking spaces right there. We also looked at the lot just off of Corey Street, that if that were to be developed, having parking in the rear there would be another 34 dedicated spaces. But providing some opportunity for development at the corner of Railroad and Dayton Street. Secondly, we looked at the areas around Mills Lawn. So if Mills Lawn were to ever transition from being the school to something else, could you reconfigure Elm Street, Walnut Street, those areas in a manner that provides additional parking without significantly impacting the existing residences, the adjacent residences, sorry. And one of the solutions was putting angled parking along Elm Street, because the right-of-way width that currently exists enables that without having to acquire any right-of-way or negatively impacting significantly the traffic flow along Elm Street. So that was really an exercise of how can we, again, utilize the on-street parking options that we have through minimal capital investments. The area on the south side of Elm Street is half street, half gravel. Eventually it should be upgraded. And that gravel area, if it were to be, have better curbs, sidewalks, and paving, easily accommodates additional angled street parking rather than parallel parking. We also looked at the same thing along Phillips Street. Whether or not all of these are necessary, I think is to be determined, but the way they're laid out, they can be done in phases so that as the village maintains its infrastructure, upgrades its infrastructure, you can implement these types of improvements. Also looked at existing lots that are underutilized or lots that are underutilized that could be utilized. So we looked at Limestone. There is a small lot there at Limestone and Corey Street that could be developed. And then looked at parallel parking, like pods of parallel parking along Corey Street along the bikeway. So all of these were exercises to see how much additional parking and how we could design it in a manner that balanced the need for parking from some perspectives, along with reducing the impact as much as we can on the built environment. So I did not hear through surveys or through feedback as much concern about parking as some have raised. But I mean, I think it's been an issue raised by the business community for years. And so we were looking at cheaper, so to speak, on-street solutions that didn't eat into potential developable land because your downtown development options are limited. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, it does. Thank you. I know this is a hot topic, so thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Any other questions or comments for Aaron as we start to wrap this up? It looks like Megan's got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, just in terms of how the plan is going to be used, you know, if something is in the plan, does that take the place of having like a public process to go through whatever that recommendation is once it's actually being considered?
Currently, the way that zoning planning uses the comprehensive land use plan is just as a piece in of weight when planning commission is considering an application from someone. It's not going to take its place. We will still follow the processes that we follow through zoning, whether it's a conditional use hearing with a public hearing process, or if it's something that actually has to, a two-phase project like a PUD that has to go through council. But the comprehensive land use plan, if that future land use plan is in there, just as the visioning is, it's something that staff looks at from the get-go when examining a potential application.
So actually, I wanted to kind of follow up on that because after watching the Planning Commission meeting, you know, I heard this narrative around if it's in a plan, that means, you know, it's going to happen. And I assume that's what prompted Megan's question. A couple things that I thought about, because I know one issue was related to some of the different parking scenarios I think it's very important that we capture all the different work that's been done and have that in a central place because it's important for a reference. So, Mary Ann, when you talked about the climate action plan and that sort of thing, I think it's important that none of that is, kind of left out there in netherworld. But I think there's this other aspect where we want to make sure that there's an ongoing mechanism for commenting on these things so that can be part of the reference that we continue to have. And I think it's important to also distinguish between, a fairly fully developed concept like bumping out curbs on Route 68 versus some ideas around, density and where things might go. I think those are very different. So anyway, but I wanted to capture some of those thoughts, but mostly we do need to have an ongoing, ability for people to comment, and hopefully we get feedback, early on rather than people waiting to respond when we actually start to do things in the village. So. Other questions or comments?
Brian, I have a recommendation.
Yeah, Josue.
Okay, thank you, Brian. We recently had a situation where we had a permit to construct a pole barn in the township, a property that we own in the township. The permit was denied, which got us thinking about our assets outside of the village and how important they are to protect them. And I'm primarily talking about our water source protection area, our well field, and our municipal enterprise facilities, such as our Sun Farm and the buildings we have on there. One of the suggestions that I have for council is that while this was not a public input that we received from the public, we think that it's important for us to take proactive steps to protecting our assets outside of the village and finding a way to incorporate them into our village limits because we need to protect them. Now, I think that we can all agree that our whale fail area is among our most important assets, and we need to protect them by all means. This is where our drinking water comes from. And we've got a Sun Farm where we have very critical equipment out there that's key to delivering essential services, and that area needs to be protected as well. So I would suggest for council to adopt a change to our map to plan for the future and look at ways of incorporating those assets into the village. And there's a strategy I've spoken with our village solicitor about legal mechanisms which would allow us to pursue those goals, and there are good strategies that we can pursue.
All right, thanks for that, Josue. Any other comments? Okay, so what's the next step, Aaron or Josue?
Well, for the suggestion that I made, I think that's something that the council could motion to make that change into the comp plan so that when it comes back to you for the first reading, that change has been incorporated. That's what would be my advice. Denise or Rianne or Aaron?
So the next steps on my end are to make any adjustments that plan board or council requests. And it sounds to me like we're talking about including statements and some mapping on potential annexation areas of village-owned facilities, which I can certainly update that as well. And then preparing the final official future land use map, and then going through and just making any adjustments to the actual website that, typos or grammatical errors, and making sure that all the links work, and then preparing that final draft to Denise for then her or staff to prepare the actual adoption resolution.
Okay. So is there any opposition to what Josue has proposed in terms of protecting, thinking in the future about better protecting our assets? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so let's incorporate that. And anything else?
I just want to make one last plea for the 25 acres that is currently designated as high-density development that I think for many, many reasons I stated at Planning Commission, it's a highly environmentally sensitive area. As a matter of fact, if I think in the whole village, if we wanted to protect one of the most environmentally sensitive areas, what would it be? And it would be that most of that, not all of it, but most of that 25 acres. And other plans have not designated it in any way for high density, and yet that's what we're doing. And so I'm just going to make that one last plea that that not be designated as high density, and that the concept plan for its development, which is a step beyond what a comprehensive land use plan does, right? Because comprehensive land use plans are general, not specific. That be a separate document, like an appendix to this, and that we vote on that separately, as are the parking plans, that we vote on those separately. And I know that there's going to be some citizens who are neighbors on Phillips and Elms who are going to be bringing a petition to council that they not allow that to be part of the plan. So I would ask that those be voted on separately at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Any other comment?
I just maybe direct that back to Aaron, because at the next meeting, you're at a first reading of an ordinance. And so if you're able to make a motion and a decision at this meeting, I think that's probably the most helpful thing for Aaron. I don't want to speak for you, but let me just throw that out there.
So, I mean, certainly any, the most clarity that I can get today or in the immediate future on the direction of what should be in or should out, or how we, the council would like to approach the concept visions is most helpful. If you want to push the ordinance out a week or so, that works as well. I mean, I'm on your timeline, so I work for you. So you, however staff and council want to proceed, I am all ears.
So in my mind, the things that have been raised are things that we can talk about in our discussions about passing that ordinance. Because what Laura's proposing is not changing any, map, it's changing the designation, and then, proposing separate votes on, certain aspects. So I'm gonna suggest, because even though things were dropped off the agenda, we are still way past where we're supposed to be, that resolving these particular issues is gonna take some time. So I haven't heard anything that, wouldn't be easy enough to make a change in designation or how we vote. All right. So anything else before we move on? Okay. Aaron, thank you. Awesome work. It continues to be a great process. Lisa, you've got the floor.
I can make this really quick because it's somewhat incomplete. I just want to let the council and the community know that the Art and Culture Commission is working on a special project that's called the People's Banner Project. So just as a reminder, the Art and Culture Commission is involved in promoting and recognizing public art. And we're trying to add value in the community by providing educational opportunities, activism, economic sustainability, and an improved quality of life. And we have a wonderful proposal from Nigiwa Orimo, who has created a lot of the banners for the Saturday rallies and has a history of beautiful art design for rallies. And she's proposed to us a workshop involving young people to teach people how to make banners And then these banners become assets of the community. So it's not like a static painting on a wall or on the street. It's about generating this public art that can be used and shared. And I can't share all the details with you yet because there's a proposed location for an installation of all of the banners that would be created by this project on a building in the village that's not owned by the village. And so I don't feel comfortable disclosing the location until I have a location permission from the person who owns that building. But if that person doesn't consent, we'll find a Plan B location. So this is within our budget for Art and Culture Commission. We're really excited about it. And our goal is to get this completed extremely quickly and installed before the election. And I want to thank Josue and Johnny for already starting to brainstorm the installation plan, because there's a way that Migawa has installed this kind of a project before that doesn't do any damage to a building. It's a very impermanent installation. So I just want to mention it to the council. So if I have to send this to you just as information off cycle in the interest of time, that's what this is all about. And contact me if you have questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, so we're going to move into old business. And first topic is meaningful anti-racism actions. And there were some documents in the packet about the Community Sit-Downs Initiative, which has been discussed not only at the Justice System Collaborative Committee meetings, but a lot of our village team members have been involved in the discussion, and this has been brought forward by Angela Allen. So I'm going to turn it over to Angela, let her kind of highlight the key aspects, and then if there are any questions, you can ask those. So Angela, take it away.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm in my car. I just got back from the game. So, so this sit down, obviously I've been talking about it for a few months now, since the beginning of our rallies and marches. And my vision for it kind of hasn't changed too much, really. I just wanted to be an open conversation between officers and the community members to kind of just calibrate where we see the village going as we move towards a more anti-racist community, and projecting that out towards others. So I see this as, obviously education, but also just so, again, like we're all on the same board of what we can do with each other to better the community. And so that would be highlighting where we've come from, and so we better understand where we're going. And then I would like to also introduce the idea of the performance evaluations for our officers as something the Citizen Review Board would be doing. And so this would also be a good opportunity to get feedback from the community about that and what they would see, what they would want to see our officers being evaluated for and reviewed. So that's kind of the goal of the sit down. I am almost done with it. I have a few more correspondence with people in terms of recording it, because we do want to respect people's confidentiality, and so working out those details. And really, aside from that, it'll just be getting the time and date of it all and doing it. So.
All right, thanks, Angela. That's a great overview, and I also think you did a really nice job in outlining it in the various documents. Chief, if you are still on the line, I know you have expressed support for this initiative, and so I wonder if you want to maybe comment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Brian. I've always been in support of bringing our team together face to face with the community. I believe that getting to know one another is probably the quintessential point of success in the work that we do. We are small enough in this community where officers, I expect them to know who lives where, what bike belongs with what house, whose car parks there, and then kind of starting this into the conversation regarding racism in Yellow Springs. I think that that can blossom, and we may be able to establish some long-time relationships, networks. I've mentioned it before. The biggest dilemma that I have in my position is trying to create a way where people trust a network to be able to let me know how the department is functioning. And so I think this will be another catalyst to that as well. I'm very excited about it. And we've got some good support from the community and the team members. And we're ready to get the ball rolling.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief. Lisa, do you want to add anything? Because I think with Angela referencing the Citizen Review Board, I know you guys have communicated about this and kind of how these things, sort of evolve and flow together.
Sure, yeah. As everyone knows, I've been very focused on the Citizen Review Board and learned a lot from Janet Mueller about the successful Citizen Review Board in Dayton. And what I learned from her is that their process was excellent, but that the most critical thing was that there was a strong champion, and they lost their champion. So it wasn't because their process didn't work, it was because they lost their champion. And here in Yellow Springs, we have a number of strong champions, and you can count me, on that list, at the top of the list, along with, others. So as you also may recall, I started to work on a process to involve trained mediators in a Citizen Review Board. And one of the most challenging aspects of that, as Angela alluded to, was creating both anonymous ways for people to provide feedback, as well as ways where people would be comfortable identifying themselves and to be contacted by someone that they felt safe talking to and not triggered. And that comment is not reflective of anything other than what we know is a very challenging climate of fear involving policing, that I'm not pointing at our Yellow Springs Police. It is, right? And we have to acknowledge that. So in parallel to this activity that Angela knows I support a lot, I've also started to work with Josue and other individuals that are part of his advisory group to collect anonymous, or if you choose to, identified, if you will, encounter data to give feedback on your experience, not only with members of our police, but also other employees of the community. And I really appreciate that Josue is fast tracking this. It's survey facilitated, and the different threads through the questions can change depending on the experience you've had. So know that I'm working on that. We have a call out to people who would like to work on that question set. And I see that as highly complementary to these physically distanced dialogues. So none of these actions alone solve everything, but I think all of them in combination were making a big difference. So thanks, Brian. And Angela, thank you.
Yeah, great point, Lisa. Sergeant Watson, did you want to add anything? I saw you pop up. Good? Oh, okay. All right, so do we have any questions for Angela or Chief or Josue?
No,
okay, I'm not seeing any.
On my end, I would add that.
Josue, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, I have no questions on my end, but I also want to Want to recognize the work of the team, Brian, Lisa. We've also done work on the performance evaluation tool, and so we're moving that along as well. So a lot of work, a lot of effort into this, and it's
and we're going to be seeing a lot more things as we continue to work through the committee and bring these forward. So I think as far as the community sit downs initiative, what I think makes sense is just to make sure that there is overall support from council to move forward. I think a lot of the logistics have been figured out, but I think the main thing is that we are looking at these being in person, but safe and distanced, as Angela and Lisa referenced. So maybe a thumbs up. Are all council members on board? Nice. Okay, great. All right, so Angela, we'll keep on moving this forward, but I know you've been working with folks and are ready to think about implementing. So thank you so much for taking the lead on this. I want to mention two other initiatives quickly that have also been kind of highlighted as being more urgent. One of those is related to a sort of community-oriented training around being prepared when, I guess, things escalate. And the idea is similar to what we've done with the crisis intervention training. I've mentioned several years back when we had a community training where some different skills were learned. We had a meeting about this, and I know that Chief is planning to talk at the town hall on Wednesday about ways that the police team are prepared to help support the community. And particularly, I think, highlighting some incidents that have come up recently and just making sure everyone understands the resources that are available. But this other aspect is, sort of exploring the opportunity to look at a community-based training, and it kind of ties into other initiatives that have been talked about with citizen academies, where they look at other opportunities to help prepare community members for various scenarios. And related to that, I know, Kevin, did you want to briefly talk about some of the stuff you've been looking at?
Sure. Josue, am I able to share my screen?
Yes, I'll give you permission now. Sorry, Kevin.
It's okay. Just tell me when to go.
Okay, you should be ready to go.
Ooh, lots of screens. All right. Can everybody see the one screen that's got Village of Yellow Springs on it? Is that a yes? Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin, could you go to a single screen, single page view, please?
Give me a second.
Thank you.
Well, that just made it worse. Can you see it all though?
It's fine.
Okay. I just changed the view. But anyway, I've talked about most of this during the Justice System Collaborative Committee last week. So Josue and I, as a result of some of the actions that we committed to do in working with the Black Lives Matter leadership, we went through the Ohio Public Entities Pool training tools that the village has access to, and we picked several areas to focus on. In general, it's talking about diversity, and of course the differences between people, whether you call it implicit bias or not. We focused on the differences that people have both in the workplace and in the real world. So these first set of trainings are available on demand. You can either do them online and or a combination of CDs that can be delivered for use on site. And then the one that's going to happen this week, that's scheduled for this week, is a training called, If You're Human, You're Biased. And that's going to be talking about the origins of biases and how they're reinforced. A lot of people, say about implicit bias training, how, you can't change the world, or it doesn't make a difference. But one thing that we're trying to do is look at some sort of a baseline assessment. Josue and I talked, I think it was this week, that we talked about a potential tool that can be used as a baseline so that everyone can sort of be assessed with regard to where they are right now. And then at some point in time, after having gone through all these various trainings and having some real world application of what has been gathered in those experiences, we'd come back and do that assessment again. And we haven't determined whether we would publicize anyone's particular scores, but just to show that there's changes and growth. Like some of the agenda in this webinar talks about, it's, equipping folks with techniques, to manage those biases on the premise that, again, if you're human, you're biased. So we do have biases, and we're not trying to solve world hunger here, but to equip folks with tools and techniques to manage the biases and to improve awareness of those biases. So just this week alone, I think will be a real in-depth and helpful training that allows folks to understand the origins of biases, the different types of biases. And all these other diversity trainings, they're not just talking about racial diversity, but also, in addition to race, gender, body type, class, all the different ways that we find excuses for treating people differently than they ought to be treated or than we want to be treated. And then this Wednesday's session ends up with a Q&A. And again, the key is not to have anything to be a one and done, but to allow this information to be shared over time and for it to be experienced in the meantime. All right, that's all I have. Any questions?
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, so I will just highlight that one of the things that Kevin's taken the lead on is exploring with a subcommittee what are, how do we measure outcomes? What are the goals? What are the different ways that we can approach implicit bias training? And so I think these are just a couple of the updates on things that I think are going to be formed in a more solid way. And we also want to look at ways that we're tracking participation. I also don't want us to forget that these trainings are designed for all village team members. And so that's part of what we also want to do, is make sure everybody knows when the trainings are and know how to access them and moving that forward. So I expect a follow-up on that next time. And if there aren't any other questions, we're going to move to a quick CARES Act fund update from Josue.
All right, keyword was quick, so I won't pull up my presentation. I don't have much of a new updates. I'm still working with Thor on outlining some of the Wi-Fi design. I do have a big news. The Yellow Springs schools was successfully granted an award as part of their broadband expansion. So they'll be pitching in $21,800 for the project. So that gets us a lot closer to our goal. What's delayed the project now? Sorry. So thank you to the Yellow Springs schools for getting us included in their grant application. It's going to be tremendous help towards the project. One of the delays into the project is that we were changing the design of the Wi-Fi in downtown. We're moving to a fixed wireless, so we will run fiber to the downtown in 2 areas. So that's we're going through still some of the design aspect. But we're pretty close. I think with Thor, we're going to get the design done this week and have all the pricing done for, and we can move forward on to the next step of starting the procurement process. Also, we've had interest from the county So we'll be scheduling a presentation to pitch our Wi-Fi downtown concept, and we hope that they not just get their support, but some contributions for the project. We're also looking to run the fiber down Corey Street to connect the Corey Street Apartments area and our wastewater facility. So the public Wi-Fi project has become a bigger project than initially started out with, but it's going to yield tremendous impact for the community in the immediate future, and it will be the basis of a municipal broadband in the future.
All right, thank you, Josue.
And Brian, we've ordered 200 gallons of additional hand sanitizer. So, and we're following all the safety precautions with it. It's a whole lot of flammable liquid, but we are in a good position. Johnny was able to negotiate a great deal on over 200 gallons of hand sanitizer. So we've got a good stockpile to continue the hand sanitizer station replacement.
That's great to hear, because, you know, it is the law that you've got to hand sanitize. So I'll also say that, you know, I saw that there was a webinar, maybe it's happening tomorrow, about sub-granting CARES Act dollars. So it seems that it's very timely right now to be, you know, working with, you know, others in the region to figure out if we can, you know, get more money to support some of these projects that have a big impact. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, and since we don't have any new business, we can roll right into the manager's report.
Well, so it's being sensitive to the time. I think I've gone in great detail on our manager's report. So I will just open up for questions. If you have any questions on my report, I welcome it.
All right, anyone have any questions for Josue on the manager's report? Laura?
Is there going to be another meeting regarding the Bernay cleanup anytime soon?
We do have a meeting scheduled coming up. We have monthly meetings, and that's going to be with the US EPA. I have Mary Ann McQueen, Tom Dietrich signed up for that meeting. So, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Josue? Okay, so board and commission reports. I didn't see anything in writing in the packet, but I believe I heard that we maybe have a nomination.
Yes.
Yes.
Laura and I would like to nominate Catherine Zimmerman for a full slot on the Environmental Commission. She currently is an alternate, and I think people who've been paying attention to the Native Habitat project know how hard she's been working and taking leadership on this with our team that includes Tecumseh Land Trust, the Glen, and Community Solutions. So she is replacing Sue Pfeiffer, who has left, and we would like to nominate her for a full slot.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yeah, Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Definitely yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other highlights related to boards and commissions? Okay, so future agenda items. Anything?
The only thing that I am seeing differently is that you probably want to move that ordinance regarding the comp plan up a meeting.
Okay. You mean bring it back at the next meeting?
No, I'm saying move it up to October 19th. Right now it's down for the 5th, unless you're okay discussing those suggestions during a reading, during the ordinance reading.
Yeah, I mean, some of those I think, you know, will naturally be part of that discussion. So let's leave it for now.
Okay.
And keep that moving. Anything else?
Brian, we have a stormwater study and electric grid system study that we want to present on.
Okay, great. Okay. Any other items? All right, well, we start early tomorrow at 8:15. Think about Corkle when you're having sweet dreams, because I think those values are important to our discussion tomorrow. And again, we're going to be in the John Bryan gym starting at 8:15. I think there'll be coffee. Bring anything else you want. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Have a